Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors, and if you are new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community, and without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. The first one is titled, "My property collapsed and eroded because of my negligent HOA. I sued them and won." When I moved into my home many years ago, one thing that I was happy to see on the HOA agreement was that they would be responsible for any property damage that occurred from weather or other natural occurrences, as well as maintaining the underlying ground. Considering I live in an area where the ground needs treatment to help prevent erosion, it actually seemed like a good deal to me. My land was a bit lifted and there was a lake, so you could imagine my initial worry. The HOA even had a guardrail to make sure that things were safe, so for a little while I actually thought that maybe an HOA could be good and not the horrible thing that I always see people talking about. Within 1 year, we had 3 pretty bad bouts of rainfall, and that was when the issues started to occur. The first time it happened, I noticed that some land past my property ended up falling apart and collapsing into the nearby lake. It was not my property, but I alerted the HOA so they knew and maybe could treat that area as well. The second time more erosion and a bigger collapse happened that got very close to the guardrail the HOA had installed. I also noticed at that point I never got any kind of ground treatment to help prevent my own land from becoming like that. I sent a letter and called the HOA to tell them about this and that in their contract they were responsible for maintenance. After several attempts to contact them, I only got generic answers, and nobody had ever come by. When I heard a weather report that another large rainstorm was coming, I was rightfully worried and did not want to put my family in danger. I was not working that week and decided that the week of that storm we were going to leave beforehand and go on a vacation to visit my parents and see some sights. Before I left, I sent one last reminder to the HOA that the rainstorm was coming and my land still had not been given any treatment or care. As you can probably guess, when I got home, I found that about half my backyard was now just gone. It had eroded and collapsed into the lake just like the land before it had. My shed, my wife's garden, and even my kids' little swing set was just gone and now part of the lake. It actually scared me for a couple of reasons. That lake was probably filled with so much debris that it shouldn't have been, and who knows what kind of effect that could have on the people living near it. The bigger concern was that eventually the erosion would come up and swallow my entire house into the lake. I was angry and turned that frustration to where it rightfully belonged, the HOA. This time, me contacting them was about the fact that my property suffered damage that they were supposed to cover due to the contract. I knew that they could not actually fix the damage because the land was just gone. After one more generic reply, I was fed up and got a lawyer because I was going to sue the HOA for going against the terms of their own agreement. Once I got a lawyer involved, suddenly the HOA wanted to talk to me and try to work things out. They claimed that they had no idea about the erosion and would have done something quickly if it had been brought to their attention. They also told me some legal crap about how erosion does not actually count as weather damage even though it was caused by the bad weather. They tried to get me to drop the charges and said they could give me $500, which would actually just get taken away from next year's membership dues. I told them where they could shove it and that I would see them in court. I had all the documentation of the emails I sent them, the phone messages they left me in response to my worries, and the fact that they never once came to treat my land, aka fix his land. Their lawyer was flopping and trying to explain that they were not responsible for taking care of my land and that they cannot do anything about an act of nature. My lawyer was quick to point out the contract they gave me talking about treating my ground to help prevent the erosion from happening in the first place. This also showed that the HOA was aware of it being a problem, otherwise it would not make sense to have it in their contract. I had proof I paid all my dues and they did not have anything except a sad attempt at trying to find a loophole in their own contract. They really did not want to give in and tried to use every excuse they could think of. They tried to say that I did not go through the right channels to contact them, so they could not have been held responsible. They claimed that since I was not there when my yard collapsed, I had no proof that it was due to erosion from the weather. The longer it went on, the sadder it got, and it ended on their part by basically saying they were trying to just do their very best to help the community, and if the judge found them to be in negligence, it would open the doors for everyone to sue the HOA until none existed anymore. And wow, Ripe Stars, that of course sounds very sad. It would be very unfortunate if that happened. Anyway, honestly, in that moment that sounded pretty good to me, and I could have spent the money I gave them to protect my land in the first place. The judge did not care about anything that the HOA lawyer had to say, and honestly did not really care what I had to say. He just wanted to look at the evidence that was put in front of him, because while people can lie and make up stories, a paper trail cannot. At the end, the HOA ended up owing me $360,000 due to their gross negligence. We decided to find somewhere else to live where the yard did not have a chance to erode into a lake. While we were getting things ready to move though, I heard plenty of gossip going around about the HOA. Apparently, every single board member on the HOA resigned right after the lawsuit, and some even left the area altogether. There were whispers of them taking the member dues and not putting any of it into the community like they were supposed to. My lawsuit also caused a bunch of other smaller suits for people that did not even know they were meant to be getting land treatments and that the HOA never did anything for them either. I am mainly glad that nobody got hurt in the entire thing and that the HOA was held accountable for their actions, or I guess their lack of actions. The cherry on top though was really leaving with the knowledge that I caused more people to realize they were getting screwed over by the HOA and standing up for themselves too. It could only take one bad storm for the whole site to erode and houses to end up going down in that lake. I never looked back though and can only hope that things are being run better over there or something else took over instead of an HOA. And yeah, Ripe Stars, in theory, as OP mentioned in the story, the whole principle doesn't sound too bad. I mean, you pay the HOA fees and they take care of your property and make sure that something like this does not happen. However, as we can see here, in reality they did not do anything and your HOA fees basically went to waste. Anyway, if you still enjoy the stories about crazy HOAs, then please don't forget to like the video because that would help me out tremendously. Thank you so much. The next one is titled, "Neighbor built a massive garage next to my property without permits and the roof is overhanging and infringing on my property." I have no proof, but I feel like people who build things without permits half the time were just told no and could not handle that answer. My neighbor definitely seems to fit the description of someone like that at least. The only way that I could think to describe this guy would be a slime ball, and that works with both the looks and personality. He has way too much gel slicking back his hair and always wears button shirts with the first few undone, so you can see that he has a gold chain on. If you met a guy like this, you would know what I was talking about, and if you did not, then I hope you never have the displeasure. He likes to complain about everything, from dogs peeing on his lawn to wanting to talk crap about new people that just moved in. Living next to him is not fun, but I would not go so far as to call it a nightmare, since he is not really a Karen. His job really fits his personality because he is a used car salesman. I actually have no bad thoughts on used cars and think it is a great thing that we do as a society. It just seems like there is a certain stereotype of guys who sell them and he fits that bill. He does not want to actually pay for a lot though, so he gets a few used cars at a time and parks them in his garage and driveway. He doesn't do bad business either, and that is not just because I can see the people coming onto his property in search of a car. From what I can see, he lives a very comfortable lifestyle and likes to invite friends over to sit on his deck and drink. Surprisingly, this is not a story about him being loud and drunk, since they are actually quiet and don't actually party late at night. No, this is about him deciding that the next obvious move for his business would be the ability to fit more cars in a garage at once. The land we both have is not crazy huge, but it is big enough that it can comfortably fit a house and a second structure. In his case, a second garage solely used for business. I'm guessing he went with his plans to the town and they gave him a big fat denied. I had no way of knowing that, and to this day it is only an assumption he even asked first. Anyway, he starts building this huge garage that could fit about 4 cars and would have doors on either side. I wish I had a picture to show you all, because it is really hard to describe in words. The thing was that since he was living in luxury and already had a big house, this garage was pushing it. He was able to get it within the lines of his property, but the problem was the roof of the garage. It hung way over onto our side, and I knew right away that this was going to cause a bunch of issues. The first one being that we did not actually have a fence, and now if we wanted one, it was going to have to go deeper into our property to go around their garage. I actually first noticed the overhang as an issue because we have a garden, which is the only fenced-in thing on the property. The garage stopped just a couple of inches from it, and the overhang totally covers the entire thing in shade. None of the plants can get the sunlight they had before because of this thing. I tried talking to my neighbor, but let's just say that trying to talk to a slime ball does not really get you anywhere, and boiled down to him thinking I was jealous he could afford such a big house and garage. I wanted to get even with this guy, and my plan was first to try and get his garage removed because there was no way this was legal. The law where I lived at least says that there needs to be a 10-foot buffer on each side of the property line, meaning that the edge of his building had to be 10 feet away from the actual property line. I went through the task of having to first get the town to come and survey the land to prove that he was at the property line with his building. Turns out that he was actually perfectly on it, like he knew right where it was when he built it. They also told me that the overhang coming onto my property was not something the town was probably going to care about, so instead I should fight the entire building itself. He might be a slime ball, but he is not dumb and knew what was going on. He was not happy about it and told me that I better stay out of his business because he had more money and could sue me until I was too broke to live in the neighborhood. At this point though, it was out of both of our hands because the town knew and were not happy about what he did. They cared more about the fact that he had no permit to build it rather than it was on the property line and overhanging over my property. Beggars can't be choosers though, and I was happy that the town was making him take the entire thing down or size it down, get a permit and redesign it to code. For me though, that was not enough of revenge, especially because he was still breathing down my neck and threatening me because he had more money than me. From all the times his friends were over, I had overheard some juicy gossip. Much of it was him giving business tips to his friends, and the biggest one was to make their business from home so they could get away without actually filing it as a business and evading taxes. This piqued my interest because if he never filed as a business, that meant he was not paying any taxes for the profits that he was making for selling cars. I put in a call to the IRS about a business of selling used cars out of a garage that did not seem to have any type of business license or be paying taxes. I was also just nice enough to provide the full name and address of the neighbor so they could look him up and find him easier. Since it was an anonymous tip, and even if it wasn't, I doubt they were going to call and give me an update on what was going on. I think from what I could see though, I could put the pieces together. He stopped getting cars and bringing them in to sell, which basically meant that his business was dead in the dirt. I also saw his nice car vanish for a much older and beat up one because I could guess he really needed the money to pay back the IRS. He still likes to yell at me and tell me that I ruined his life and I was just jealous of him. I always retort that if he thinks I did anything illegal, he can feel free to sue me with all of that money he was still claiming to have. We both know that it didn't exist and he was forced to get another job and live like everyone else. Honestly, if he just did not act like a slime ball, he might have gotten away with keeping his business. Instead, he wanted to act like a jerk and got what he deserved. And yeah, ripe stars, these kinds of revenge stories are the ones I enjoy the most because I really hate it when people are bragging. So in my opinion, this neighbor really got what he deserved. And the next one is titled, Alrighty, I will do it now. The main star of this story is my wonderful dog. She is a service animal and as a result is very well trained. Up next, my annoying and petty neighbors. I live in a small duplex with an even smaller front yard that is not fenced in. The only thing separating the duplex and the neighbor's house is a very narrow driveway. It's important to note that when I refer to the neighbors, I am not referring to the residents of the connecting unit of the duplex, but the owners of the house a driveway over. My neighbors have a history of annoying behavior. For starters, they are extremely socially awkward, they watch over us like hawks and have never been able to hold a conversation with us despite us being friendly and even trying, and they are some of the most passive-aggressive people on earth. Maybe it's because we are college-aged and they have something against the dudes, but whatever the reason, they have it out for us. The neighbors have called our landlords to tell them that we are partying at all hours of the night. The family, with infants in the connecting unit, the unit that shares a wall with us, have never once complained. When the landlord asked them about these complaints, they always denied it. For reference, aside from me, none of the other residents of the house even drink. I drink on occasion, once every few months, but never at the house out of respect for the sober people. The neighbors, though, called the city over the course of several months and got one side of the street turned into a no parking zone because we have 4 cars in total, one for each person that lives in our unit, and have to park on the street. This, of course, obstructed their view. As a result, we started parking in front of their house on the legal side of the street. One day while we were gone, they moved their truck from their driveway that has ample parking to the street to block us from parking there. Their truck did not move for 6 months. Anytime my dog goes number 2 in the yard and it sits for more than a few hours, they call the landlord to report it, and because of my disability, I cannot always get to it immediately. My landlord understands this and understands how the neighbors are, so she had stopped saying anything aside from laughing with me how ridiculous and annoying these people are. This is just a short list of my grievances with our neighbors. I could go on and on, but by now you get the point. Well, yesterday morning, I let my dog out as per usual. I was in my underwear, which are thin and tight-fitting, as I had just rolled out of bed. Let's just say they don't hide much of anything. I am standing in the doorway where my neighbor's house is blocked from my view. As my dog is sniffing around in our yard, I look down at my phone. A few seconds later, I hear our neighbor, the wife, shout, No, don't do that here. Get out of our yard. Stop that," in a very panicked voice. Turns out they were all sitting outside, and by the time the neighbor had shouted, it was too late to call my dog back over. She was in the process of gifting them a big present. I shout, "Hey, I'm sorry about that. I'll come get it. Give me a minute," and call my dog back inside. Dead silence. About 15 seconds go by. I was on my way to my room to throw some pants and a shirt when I hear a muffled shout from the husband. "Come pick this up right now." I chuckled to myself and shouted, "Okay," with a huge grin on my face. I knew what I had to do. I dropped the pants that I had grabbed, I turned right around, picked up a doggy bag by the door, and made my way out of the door and into the view of the husband, who is standing cross-armed near the pile of poop with a rude expression and posture, the wife and the daughter. Watching the look of anger turn into shock was so satisfying. He was truly speechless, as was the rest of the family. I'm just happy to have a story I can finally share on here. I also think the family is LDS, Mormon, so that is probably the most graphic display of private bits they have ever seen, at least in the non-marital sense. And yeah, ripe stars, I guess life could be so much easier if some entitled neighbors actually had compassion and empathy and would care about other people instead of only their own lives. And the next one is titled, No, You Cannot Mow My Lawn. I cut my own lawn, always have. A neighbor kid came to my door last week and asked if I wanted him to cut it for me once a week for $15 each time. I said no, my yard is not big and it takes me maybe 45 minutes, and that is if I'm really thorough. Otherwise, I can get it done in half an hour. Well, the neighbor kid left and life went on. Then Sunday, his mom came to my door and offered her son's services again. I said thanks but no thanks, and she went on to explain that he is already doing her yard, my next door neighbor's yard, the house between us, and my next door neighbor on the other side. And that it would be easier for him to just go straight across all 4 yards instead of having to do 2, shut the lawnmower off and do the other house. I just kind of shrugged and said, sorry, but I'm good. Today, my next door neighbor brought it up and said, he's a kid trying to make some extra money. Help him out. Don't make his life more difficult. It's only $15 a week. The thing is, that is $15 I don't want to spend when I can easily do it myself. Am I the a-hole? And yeah, ripe stars, I will redirect this question to you. Do you think that OP is the a-hole for not wanting to spend 4 times $15 per month for a service he does not really need? Honestly guys, maybe I'm in the minority here, but that is $60 I could very well spend on something else. That's not that cheap. A user in the comments agreed and said, not the a-hole, you should not have to pay for something you don't want. They need to respect other people's lives and choices. Someone else said this, I'm a control freak about my lawn and my husband won't even mow because I am that bad. It's a character flaw, I admit it, but I just cannot help it. I'm not paying someone else to do something I will just redo myself anyway. And another person said, I'm the same, I like my lines going a certain direction, I know how to do all the fiddly bits and I like knowing the mower is cleaned thoroughly and properly after the mow. I hate it when my partner does it, mainly because the mower is never cleaned properly and the fiddly bits are just ignored, so they are harder to do next time I mow and there is a ton of clippings left under and around the blades. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel, but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support and I hope to see you again tomorrow.